Thanks for listening to the AZ Wildcats postgame. I am your host, Mike Luke, joined by Ben One White and Mr. William Brad Allis. All right, we've got a lot to get to this show. Arizona basically gets bullied by Oklahoma. Guys, this was a very frustrating game for me because, listen, I like Tommy Lloyd. I think that a lot of times people are prisoners of the moment. I get all of that, but there's just two things that make absolutely no sense here about for me at this point where we're at. The 3-point perimeter defense, I don't care what the percentages say in this game. It's clearly a strategy to just leave guys open at some point because even when they miss, it's generally open. This game, Arizona got right back in the game, and guess what? You give up 4 wide open threes that hit nothing but the bottom of the net. At some point, this is a strategy that is not working. And, guys, I don't get it. It is baffling to me why we were at this point. Brad?
Yeah, it ended up being a 5-point game at the end, but it really wasn't even that close. Oklahoma led, I think, for 13 at one point. Just atrocious offense altogether in both halves, and really in the first 10 minutes of the game, I think Arizona shot 1 for 17. I think there was only maybe 1 or 2 field goals made there to start the game, and it just spiraled everything out of control. Right, the defense wasn't good. Oklahoma got hot from 3. They were basically doing whatever they wanted out there. And you start to think and you start to really have the honest conversation about where this team is and maybe expectations being readjusted, right? Because a lot of this team was constructed. Yeah, you had Love back, you had Bradley back, you had Krivas back, but a lot of newcomers that come in from a transfer standpoint, and maybe the development and the expectations just quite aren't what people thought they were going to be. And there's a lot more questions to be asked, left unanswered than we have answers for. And when you look at the games that Arizona's lost in these big time matchups, the last 7 games, right, even going back to last year, it's a pretty regular trend at this point. And I think there's a lot of cause for concern right now.
All right, Brad, real quick. Grayson, I disagree with you. It is a strategy because they go under the screen every single time. It's clearly an option, and they let guys walk right into 3-point shots. Brad, go ahead.
I think you look at, I think overall, a lot of Tommy Lloyd's defense is good. But I think if you want to go back to Sean Miller, who's by all accounts a very good defensive coach, except he loved the hedge out there with the big, which was awful. Tommy Lloyd's ability to switch on these is awful. And here's the thing. You're right. Arizona gives up a bunch of open threes early, and if they're making them, Arizona's in trouble because then the other team gets confident and hot. And they made a bunch of contested threes later in the game, but it's too late. The good news was Davidson couldn't make those shots yesterday, not often enough. But it's like all coaches have little blind spots here and there, even the great ones, Lute and all the greats. The way they attack the perimeter or don't attack the perimeter is a problem. I think we're going to talk about some roster construction with this team, some lack of development. But at the end of the day, if you look at it, the big difference in this game was, if I'm not mistaken, they were 21 points better from behind the arc, which overcame Arizona being 9 points better off turnovers.
Right, but that
was the difference of the game.
But that's the point. That's the point to me, though, is that this is, at some point, this isn't just teams, and Ben One White made this point in our group text. At some point, it's not just teams being hot against Arizona. It's giving up, and again, like I said, it's giving up these plays time after time. I mean, it was Stanford last year. It was Oregon State. I mean, heck, against Davidson, I didn't even think, we talked in the postgame, I didn't even think they had a good perimeter defense against Davidson.
No, Davidson just missed wide open shots, and that's the problem. When you get wide open shots early, even if you start defending better, the guys are hot by then. Again, I think
it doesn't matter at that point.
It doesn't matter. You're right. It doesn't matter at that point because they're hot, and that's the problem. That even if you start, because you're bad at it early, no matter how well you play, how intense you play, at the point you make 2 or 3 early ones, and then you're going to make that one with the guy in your face or the one from the logo with the time running down on the clock like Fears did. And that's the problem. This is something now that has burned Arizona too many times. And it's something where at some point, Lloyd needs to take a look in the mirror because most of the stuff he does works. This doesn't.
Now, Grayson, again, I'm going to disagree with you here. It'd be a strategy if they're shooting behind screens, but leaving. No, the problem is everybody, they go under every single screen. They never hedge. They never fight through it. It is 100%. And again, I'm not saying it's right or it's wrong, although I think it's wrong, but that is his strategy, and it doesn't work. Again, especially like Brad just said, Ben, when teams get going, at that point, it's done, man. Like, Charles Barkley always says, man, you're on fire at that point. There's nothing we can do about this.
You can overcome turnovers. You can overcome even rebounding. That is the hardest thing. Once you bury yourself in a hole, there's no chance. And Lloyd will even tell you, I mean, they're going to pack the paint. They're going to force teams to shoot. And when you do that, and especially when the guards are just so out of touch, it seems like on all these screens or even contesting shots, for a matter of fact, this is what happens. And you saw it a little bit against Davidson. Arizona was just a lot better from a roster perspective, but Davidson had no business throughout stretches of that game shooting the way they did. And you saw it here tonight. I mean, Oklahoma is not a great team by any means. Yeah, I get they're undefeated, but this should be a game that Arizona should have won without any problems. It's becoming a trend, and there's a lot to be left to be desired, to be honest with you. Things go wrong, and we can talk about Arizona missing some easy layups and a number of different things, but the problem is when you're losing games the same way, opponent after opponent, which this team is, right? It's no secret how Arizona loses these games. They get beat up on the offensive glass, and they give up a bunch of threes. If Arizona was losing games, maybe a team gets hot from 3-1 game, and then maybe the next game there's a bizarre amount of turnovers or the officiating is all out of whack, kind of like we saw against Wisconsin. I think I'd have a little bit of a different perspective on it, but this team is just losing big-time games the same way every single game.
Yeah, Kobe, I understand that, and I agree. Kobe L. Thiel says the issue tonight was they couldn't stay in front of people. It wasn't because of screens. I'm just going to a mentality that you're okay with giving up open shots is more of my point. And again, Ben, you just hit the nail on the head on something else, as you always do, Ben One White, that this team gives up way too many killer offensive rebounds. And one guy that I think that I was probably wrong on is Trey Townsend. He gives up way too many rebounds. He can score some buckets here or there. He's better than Javier Amos. That's for you, Kobe L. Thiel. But at the end of the day, though, how many times was he just giving up offensive rebounds? That to me is another thing. That goes back to it. Teams are doing this stuff to Arizona, and Arizona's not doing it to them.
Yeah, part of the problem is he's not aggressive enough on the glass. And then when Arizona does go with their more tenacious rebounders, Awaka specifically, they give up other things, whether it's offensive ability, the ability to chase the smaller big like they had against, even though he really wasn't a big, but you know what I mean, against Davidson. So the problem is, you either go with Townsend, who's not rebounding, or you go with Awaka and you give up so much else. But even then, Townsend wasn't great offensively either. He has been, frankly, a disappointment. I think you also have to look at the fact that KJ Lewis appears to be no better this season.
Yeah, that's definitely a problem as well.
I'm not ready to say the same about Krivas yet because of the injury issue, the offseason, but he right now is essentially the same guy he was a year ago. And unfortunately for this team, Caleb Love isn't the same guy he was a year ago. He's the same guy he was 9 months ago when he was struggling down the stretch. And all that combined, I think the inevitable question is, would Arizona have been better off with Ballo and Sanin instead of Love and Krivas? Because right now they're not getting enough from those guys. Right,
Ben?
Yeah, I think that's probably what's hurting Arizona the most, because it's no secret they want to work inside out. And Krivas isn't necessarily a bad player by any means. I think he can be a problem. I think he's getting there, but Ballo is just different. I mean, he imposed his will physically. Arizona would find a way to get easy buckets. They would get to the line, and things would kind of open up from there. And when you're not able to do that, like you saw tonight, all Oklahoma did early on was pack the paint, and Arizona could get nothing going. They dared Arizona to shoot outside jumpers, shoot from three, and they just couldn't do that. And to Brad's point, you bring in a lot of gaps, a lot of transfers to fill in those gaps. Townsend, whoever you want to talk about, outside of Anthony Dell'Orso, Mike, who's the one consistent guy on this team who can make buckets? I mean, he's the only one right now.
No, I mean, seriously. And let's talk about Caleb Love for a second here. I feel like it's weird. It feels like Tommy Lloyd tried to rein him in a little bit, but by reining him in, you kind of took away his confidence, because if he's not out there, listen, man, I mean, at this stage in the game, you know that you're going to get some bad shots from him. That's just going to be the way that it is. But this was also a guy that was a third-team All-American last year. He is, if you're going to pick up one end of the stick, you got to pick up the other. You can't just basically take away what he does well there, William.
Yeah, I mean, the other problem is he can't get to the line. He had no foul shots today.
Right.
Yeah, again, he's a guy I will take 2 or 3 bad shots from, but I need him to make one of those bad 3 shots, and then I need him to make a couple other big buckets. And again, it's hard to be overly critical because some of them are just missing. Like tonight, he had that 3 that would have tied the game. It was a good look, just didn't fall. But at the same time, he can be so deadly attacking. And again, I know Oklahoma was trying to prevent the layup, but attack and pull up. We saw Bradley do that several times, and Bradley's the one guy who I think does look better offensively than he was last year. He may not be
he's for sure better, yeah.
Yeah, he may not be distributing the ball as well this season, but it's more of a product of other guys not being able to score. But if and I know off air you were talking about player of the game, I still would have given it to Bradley. I know he had 2 turnovers, but 3 assists, 4 steals, 4 rebounds, but he got to the line. He didn't force threes. He was 0 for 1, still scored his 16 points, had a couple big buckets. But you're just not getting a consistent performance out of these guys. And that's the problem. Carter Bryant's now basically out of the rotation.
Which I don't
get that.
I don't get that one at all. That one makes absolutely no sense to me, because he's the one player that's got high upside on this team. And you look at him, and it's some guys are, and this is another thing that just kind of that I don't get about Lloyd, is that some guys are just allowed to kind of do whatever they want. And there's no real accountability. You look last year with Kylan Boswell. The problem is, but you look at it now, and, he said, well, I couldn't play Carter yesterday because he needs to realize that he's got to stay confident if he's messing up. Well, generally benching him isn't the way to go about doing that. I thought that was an odd quote, but it's just odd. There's odd accountability for odd players, and at times there's no accountability for other players.
I think you have Caleb Love, and then you have Jaden Bradley, and outside of that, I think they have no idea what they want to be from an identity standpoint. And that probably bleeds into what Lloyd's trying to do when it comes to coaching. But no, I agree with you. Carter needs to be out there. He's somebody who I think when he gets going, he'll be a lot better than what he's showing. And he's obviously still so young and whatnot, but you got to find this stuff out now. And in games where your shooting is just absolutely dreadful, the majority of that game, you can get nothing going offensively. What do you have to lose by putting somebody like him out there? Right? Dell'Orso was able to stay out there because he made some key threes and got hot and kept Arizona in the game at times when it tightened up there in the second half. But I think the same expectation should be said for all of these players. If they're able to come in and flash, and you got to give some guys a little bit more of a leash, because to your point, Mike, some guys can do whatever they want, like KJ Lewis with that tech. You think about that, but guys like Carter Bryant come in, maybe they miss a shot and they're immediately directed back to the bench. Just doesn't make a lot of sense. All
right, now we got a super snap coming in from the great Terrence Wilmore. By the way, his daughter, TJ Wilmore, doing very, very good things. Can we put the super snap up there? If Adia's defense play no offense philosophy and Tommy's offense good but play no defense, they'd both be cooking with gas. This team should rebound better and definitely defend better. That's my other thing too. Why aren't you rebounding better? I mean, when you're going with teams that are huge at points, you're giving up. It just feels sloppy. It feels it just doesn't feel well run. It doesn't feel like there's a lot of, I don't know, man. It just doesn't feel like there's a lot of whatever that is.
And it's way too early. And it's, although the red flags are everywhere and that panic button is shining, I'm not ready to proclaim them bad or mediocre yet. I'm getting close. But is this a Steve Alford team? is this a lot of talent that just doesn't fit together.
Yeah, but Steve Alford's team always had like 3 NBA players. There's like one NBA player.
No, but I'm
team.
saying, and not unlike some of the Miller teams right before all the allegations.
Oh, like,
it's like you're collecting well-regarded players, but you're not really seeing how the pieces fit. And part of me is wondering if that's what this is.
I think there's maybe
they just don't seem to fit together.
I think there's another bigger issue that we need to discuss here in just a second, and that revolves around what they're playing on. But first, Empire flooring. Empire flooring. Let me ask you this. If this basketball court was made out of Empire flooring, would it have been a little bit more bouncy for Arizona? I see you agreeing there, Ben One White.
Hopefully in a good way it would be, but it would certainly be more bouncy, yes.
Yes. Brad, I see you agreeing with this one as well.
I worry that would have been too bouncy for Oklahoma, who's out rebounding.
Yeah, that might not have helped.
Maybe the Empire flooring would be to a detriment. It would look great, though.
That might not, yeah. But here, they should have scheduled an in-home estimate. They should have done that, and they didn't do it. All listeners can receive a $350 off discount when they use promo code PHNX. Restrictions apply. See EmpireToday.com/PHNX for details. Get it. Check it out. Also, guys, here's something that we need to have. We need to get the wave in. Let's get the wave. Come on. I know we're all down. Let's get the wave going. Everybody get the wave going. Wave time, wave time, wave time. Gila River Resorts and Casinos. Check it out. Ben One White, you have seen this from the highway, as have you, William Brad Allis.
Many times.
Yes, everybody, come on. We only have one wave in here at this point. We had 13 waves in there the other day. All right, much better. But what kind of experience is it?
Is that even a question? Fun and immersive.
It's a fun and immersive experience. Erica Elday being very, very lazy. Not even putting the wave in there. All right. But either way, it's a fun, immersive experience. Check it out. Gila River Resorts and Casinos. Go there, have fun, and you will thank me later on this one. Yes, a very, very fun and immersive experience. Okay. Now, everybody here, you guys are all awesome. TLN, Dennis Walsh, the great Dennis Walsh. You guys are fantastic. This is still sports at the end of the day. Let's have fun here. Let's have fun. It's okay. It's sports. Blame it on me. Blame it on me. When in doubt, I tell people this all the time. Blame this on me. Somehow I have a problem. Probably was something that I did here. So again, check it out. All right, now let's talk about some of the incoming, and let's talk about some of the player personnel here. One guy that I'm pretty sure. Oh yeah, the takeover on the takeover is you need to come here to Saturday, the takeover. All kinds of good stuff there. November 30th, Erica Elday will be there. We'll be there. And all the cool kids are going to be there. Yes, again, this is my fault, but you can tell me in person is my fault. You don't know me. All right, but I think it's going to, what time are we getting there? About 11 o'clock, something like that. Tony Clifton, the great Tony Clifton. All right. Some guys that and Black Friday, we'll get to that at the end. All right. But one thing I got to put out there, though, also, is that there are some guys that I think it's fair to say at this point probably just aren't as good as we hoped. That one is Trey Townsend. Listen, I looked at Trey Townsend, and I was at 10:30, by the way. I looked at Trey Townsend, and I was like, put up a lot of really good numbers against good teams. Maybe this isn't one of those mid-majors that just kind of stinks because you're playing guys like me and Ben One White. But you watch him, he doesn't really look the part. He definitely is undersized, doesn't look athletic. Kobe L. Thiel was right about him, but he still lost the war because he preferred Javier Ramos. But guys, at the end of the day, Townsend just doesn't. He gets beat on the boards. He's not really doing anything out there that is a difference maker. I don't know what else to say.
Well, he's one of those guys, to your point, because he's undersized, he needs to make up for that in another area. And traditionally, that area is going to be shooting. At best, he's an inconsistent shooter. I get it. He had 10 today. He was 5 for 8 from the field. But yeah, I mean, you replace somebody like Keyshawn Johnson and obviously Ballo. That front court looks a lot different this year. And I think Awaka, has shown that he can get in there and do things right. He wasn't as consistent tonight. He didn't have a great game. That forward spot is kind of a big question mark for this team. And again, probably speaks to why they're getting beat up so badly on the boards. We're not used to seeing that because Arizona's always had and done a really good job of getting big athletic guys at the wing spot and at the center spot who can come in and be aggressive up front and set the tone. And, outside of Kribis, doesn't have a lot of help this year.
Right.
Yeah, I mean, I'll say tonight, I don't think he was that bad. He was 10-5. And again, I'm as doom and gloom as I have been. I'm going to give you one little ray of hope with Townsend. We were having similar conversations about Kashad Johnson this time last year. You and I, Mike, were like, we thought he was more aggressive. We thought,
right.
and he became that guy. By the end of the year, he was the guy we were sold from San Diego State. So I'm not again ready to turn the page on Trey Townsend,
Right.
but I'm here. I'm ready. I'm almost there. Just like a lot of the guys on this team. Again, there's a lot of basketball to play. We've seen teams struggle early and round into shape. We've also seen teams come out of the gate on fire and hit conference play, and there are other teams. And I don't know, but right now I'm not optimistic. But I'm not ready to bury this team yet. Again, I do know where the shovel is.
Yes. All right. Now, one thing about me, I'm an idiot, but Max Berry, one thing about me, though, is I will always take the L on the chin. Right now, trust me, I've been watching Illinois. I have been rooting against Illinois. Trust me on this. I watched Illinois today. That is a solid basketball team. I hate to say it, but salute emoji, tip of the cap to you, tip of the branded Bills cap to you. But again, they look very, very good. All right. Now, let's get back to another super snap. Rodrigo Diaz de Vivar, by the way, awesome name. Make no mistake, Arizona is a Final Four caliber team. Sadly, Arizona peaked last year with Tommy Lloyd as coach. Here comes the apologist Mike Luke with too early in the season to panic. All right. I don't know that I've ever been called an apologist because I don't know that if you've watched my social media, I've been when it's come to football, I've been very, very difficult or very, very hard. I do not know. I've never really been called an apologist, but I can.
You do apologize though.
No, I apologize because I'm wrong on almost everything.
My bad,
but
Taylor.
Yes, but exactly. Yes, there's a lot of my bads in there.
There's no my bads this year, which is a problem. That's
yeah. That is the problem. There are no my bads. Can I have a reverse my bad? And by the way, like where I'm like, I thought this guy would be good, and he's actually not. My bad, Trey Townsend. But this is obviously an issue. Let me ask you guys this. The NBA talent gets brought up, that aspect. Do you have to, and I go back and forth on it a little bit, because if I've got a team filled with Jason Gardner and Michael Wright types, I don't really care if they're NBA players or not. I know that I can win with them. Do you have to have NBA players to win a championship in this day and age? What say both of you?
I don't think so. I mean, because I think when you look at the teams that are winning the titles lately, I mean, you look at the UConns of the world, I think experience and fit tops talent all day long. It's not to say you're going to pass up on a lottery pick or you don't want guys to make it to the league, but no, I don't think that's a deal breaker to win a title at all.
Can we say this, though? You might have to have NBA talent without NBA size, because Jason Gardner, if he's 6'3", he's in the NBA.
Right.
Michael Wright, if he's 6'10", 6'11", he's in the NBA. Michael Wright and Jason Gardner were too short. Right. But they're, and again, especially, again, look at Tubelis. Tubelis could have been 7'3". He was still Tubelis. A really good college player. So, yeah, I think, you use the UConn example. UConn's still stocked. How many first-round draft picks do they have? So I think you need more NBA guys, or you have to have elite guys. And again, Caleb Love's, I think, the closest thing Arizona has to a guy who's not an NBA player, who's a great college player, but he's not playing great right now. And that's the problem. If Caleb Love's playing great, Arizona probably wins today, and they probably win against Duke, because they couldn't score against Duke. They were never going to beat Wisconsin. Wisconsin just blew their doors off, and that weird officiating. But
I didn't have a problem with the Wisconsin game. And, in a weird way, I didn't have a terrible problem with the Duke game either, because Duke is better than Arizona. Just watching them in warm-ups, you could just tell they were a better basketball team than Arizona.
And again, Arizona couldn't score that game, and a lot of that was Duke's defensive ability. But if Caleb Love was playing great basketball, playing at an all, Big 12 player of the year caliber, Arizona's a different team. He's not. He's playing like an honorable mentioned all Big 12 player. And that's a problem. He has to be Arizona's best player, and he's not. It's Jaden Bradley. And it's not close.
Yeah, for sure. Now, I will say, yeah, it is Jaden Bradley. Now, let's talk a little bit about KJ Lewis. Arizona needed KJ Lewis to take a really big jump this year. He hasn't taken that at all, Ben.
No, he hasn't. And it's not that he hasn't been aggressive or hasn't been given the opportunity. He's probably got the longest leash out of all these players. You're talking about accountability and switching guys in and out who shouldn't be out there. He's had more than enough opportunities, and he's been aggressive. He's tried to shoot the ball. It never goes in. He's tried to get a little stuff, some things going, getting to the rim. That hasn't necessarily worked out. Just not a very polished player at this point, but when you look at the size and you look at what could be, I mean, to me, the body type looks like an NBA player, but the skills just aren't there. I mean, the good news is he's still relatively young, but yes, he hasn't made that jump that we all thought he would, and that's a big problem for this
and he
team
doesn't really
because
ahead,
because you look at these other guys who came in, right? No matter how good the past is or what you think about somebody like Townsend or Dell'Orso or whoever you're bringing in, there's still that question mark. Whereas Lewis, you felt like, okay, he was here last year, he showed flashes, and we're going to need a lot of that to take to the next level because there's still going to be question marks at other positions. Just hasn't been the case for him.
Yeah, Brad, KJ Lewis, they needed him to be better.
Yeah, he's the same guy he was last year.
Right.
And that's fine when you're a role player off the bench as a true freshman. You're now, it sounds funny, you're now an experienced sophomore who's been through the wars, and you're the same guy. Right. I see no difference to his game other than maybe he's lacking confidence. And again, if he can't get it done, I need to see more from Carter Bryant. Frankly, I kind of want to see Carter Bryant at the 4 and see Arizona go smaller. I'd rather, but again, and take your lumps at this point. But yeah, Arizona needs KJ Lewis to be, at least 50% better, and he's just not.
Right. Now, and he just hasn't been. Now, I do think that there is probably one thing, though, that maybe some of the players might have been indulging in a little bit too much last year, and like our good pal Ben White, but let's talk about it first. NUTRL. Now, Ben White, you like NUTRL. This is true. William Brad Allis, do you like NUTRL?
Haven't tried it yet.
You have not tried it yet. I have tried it yet. Now, Kevin L. Thomas has tried NUTRL. Now, you look at it, it's from St. Louis, Missouri as well. Check it out. St. Louis, Missouri. Again, with NUTRL, it is all, it's very good. We're going to be drinking some of that this Saturday before Arizona ASU. But with NUTRL, keep it tasty, enjoy responsibly. 2024 Anheuser-Busch NUTRL at Flavored Vodka, Carbonation, St. Louis, Missouri. Ben, How many kids have NUTRL that you know?
Oh, everybody. Anybody who's not drinking a NUTRL is missing out. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. And you know what they're probably wearing while they're drinking NUTRL?
A branded Bills hat.
A branded Bills. That is a segment that is branded by itself. Branded Bills, my friend. Branded Bills. All right, here's the deal with branded Bills. You might say, Mike, where could I get a branded Bills? Head to brandedbills.com and use code PHNX for 20% off your first order. Our good pal Kevin L. Thomas always wears branded Bills. Kobe L. Thiel wears branded Bills as well. Oh, Rick Trimmer, the great Rick Trimmer, is in here as well. I would imagine Rick Trimmer wears branded Bills. Check him out. All kinds of really, really good things at Branded Bills, and that's where it is. Branded Bills. Again, you will thank me later. All right, I guess now we got to talk a little bit. This is kind of fun to talk about. ADO does not, there's a few bright spots on the team. ADO, I get that can't play defensively, but ADO offensively isn't bad. He's kind of an interesting guy, fellas. He can shoot the 3, and he can get to the hoop a little bit. I like ADO. Again, I know that he can't defend, but heck, we don't defend anyway, so what does it matter?
Yeah, that was the hope when he came in, that he could be a guy who could get you some points off the bench, be a guy who can catch fire from time to time, and he's been solid. He's not a good defender, gets lost on defense, doesn't give you much else other than scoring. But if you're getting, if you can bring him in for 15 minutes a game, and get 7-8 points, that's great. The problem is they're relying on him a lot more because they're not getting consistent scoring elsewhere. And then, it becomes what's your plus minus with him on the floor? Is he scoring enough to overcome the defensive liabilities?
Yep. And I think that's the question. But I do like that when he goes in there, he's looking to stroke the ball. He is looking to get his. I like that.
He's not as aggressive as Pella, but he's kind of got that Pella attitude, which I like. I'm going to shoot the ball. I don't really care what happens. Yeah, if he's relatively open at the hoop as well, getting to the rim, to your point earlier, he can make some outside shots. But in terms of contested shots and creating his own shot and defense, that's all obviously not good, as we know. But hey, man, if ADO doesn't show what he did tonight, this might be a double-digit loss for Arizona.
Yes, and I think that is a big aspect
that's
of
the issue.
that is a big that's a big aspect of it. I don't know how else to put that. Now with Caleb Love, you got to be able. I almost need to tell him, dude. And I've been saying this for a while now. Just go ahead and shoot the ball, bro. Like I'm at this stage where it's like, okay, man, just go ahead and shoot the ball, because I can't have a neutered Caleb Love out there. You've got to be able to have neutered. I need to have Caleb Love being aggressive, because if he's not aggressive and he's just being hesitant, that leads to turnovers.
Yeah, I mean, he has to. You need him more aggressive. You need him attacking the hoop more too. He's very effective. Last year when he was attacking the hoop, that's when he played his best ball, because that opens up that outside shot for him, because he gives you the little head fake. The defender is scrambling. He's a great foul shooter when he gets to the line. Again, he did not attempt a foul shot today, and that's a problem, because he's a guy who is generally going to get you 80+% at the stripe, and he gets you big foul shots late in games.
Right.
We all remember at Duke last year. He's a clutch player at the line. He's only sometimes a clutch player from the field, and he can be. But yeah, he needs to take his shots. He needs to play aggressive. Needs to gamble sometimes on defense, like we've seen Bradley do, especially against Davidson. But he's got to figure out the confidence thing, because this whole second guessing himself, it just isn't working.
Right. Yeah, it's second guessing. And the other thing we talked about before, you got to be able to get I don't care how it happens. You've got to get 8 points inside the 3-point line. Whether that's free throws, anything within 12 feet, and it annoys the heck out of me, and I'm going to keep talking about this. Is that when his 3-point shot isn't making, he is good enough to be able to get by his guy, and I think way too often he settles, and that is, I got to put that on Tommy Lloyd at some point.
Yeah, and I think, too, you have to look at Jaden Bradley as well. For whatever reason this year, I think he's been good defensively. I think he's forced some turnovers, some steals, and obviously he's contributed from a points perspective. But the assist numbers just haven't been there. I mean, the ball is not moving, and you almost wonder if it makes more sense in stretches where you just put the ball in Love's hands, right? And have him bring it down the floor and make it a little bit easier to get to the rim. I just think that Love gets lost on a lot of these offensive possessions, where he's kind of just standing around at the 3-point line, and he's either swamped, right, because the defense is keying in on him, or, the ball is going inside down low to Krivas. Not that can't work, obviously, when Arizona has its opportunities, but I just think it's coaching or putting the ball more in his hands, they definitely need to do a better job of. I just don't think he's had enough, easy plays set up for him. And I think if you can get some easy plays to the basket as well and just make things easier and space things out for him, I think it'll go a long way. I think he needs a little bit more help.
Yeah, and I think with Caleb, also the other thing too that I think is a little bit interesting about all of this as well is that Arizona needs him to be a difference maker, because if he's not a difference maker, they're not going to be a very good team. This team is predicated on him being an All-American, and if he's not an All-American or something like that, this team just isn't going to be very good. That's pretty much the only way I can put it.
No, you're right. I mean, when they brought him back, and possibly at the expense of some freshmen, and I know there's all different theories on whether the kid who's at ASU now was really coming, but Love coming back was the final nail in that coffin. But you needed him to be the guy. You needed him to be much closer to the guy who was Pac-12 Player of the Year than a guy who right now looks like the 16th, 17th best guard in the Big 12.
Right.
And he's good. He's fine. He's been fine this year. He's been okay. What is he averaging? 13, 14. But he hasn't taken over a game. He hasn't had that dagger shot, because Arizona has, the 3 games they've won going away. And the 3 games they've lost, they haven't been able to hit a big shot. or big enough shot. They obviously battle back, cut it to 3 today. They made that little run with about 5 minutes to go against Wisconsin, but they can't hit a big shot when it's needed to, get them, the lead or cut that lead to 1 instead of 3. And that's what they need from him. And yes, they need him to be closer to an All-American than, that guy's pretty good.
Yeah, and let's talk about. There's another great point in. That's another great point in here as well, where KJ needs to go back almost to just kind of being the junkyard dog. I always thought that he was a little bit better in kind of a Hassan Adams role, where you're just your energy, your strength, you just go out there and you play really hard. That is what I think he's better at.
Yeah, and that's what got him in games last year, and that's what got him, opportunities that you wouldn't think he would get, and that's why he was brought back, and that's why he was so, I guess, reliant on this year to kind of make that next jump, because he would get in passing lanes, he would chase after the balls on the glass, and do a lot of the stuff that players don't want to do. It seems like right now he's more concerned about hitting that shot and just getting consistent with that offensively. To me, if he goes back to his old ways, that'll open things up for him, and he'll inevitably start having some more easy baskets. I just think he hasn't had a lot of easy baskets. At times he has, but again, he's not somebody you exactly want shooting threes like you saw tonight. So I just think he needs to be more mindful and more smart when it comes to that, and play to his strengths, because he's clearly not playing to his strengths right now. Yeah.
Now, Brad, what would you do then going forward? I think that's the other question. What would you do going forward?
That's a good question. I think you have to, and I'm not there in practice. You may have to go down to the good old fashioned loot. I'm going to play the 5 best rebounders. To me, I want to see more minutes from Carter Bryant. But I also need Carter Bryant not to just settle for threes. He was 0 for 3 today, and all 3 were threes. I mean, he's 6'9". He needs to, whether it's attack the basket, try to get him moving to the basket, go and drop plays for him. And he's not the answer all told, but you need more out of him. Obviously they, at some point, got to figure out, is Krivic's, average play now a fact that he, missed so much time in the offseason, he was injured, or is this just who he is? I think
Krivic's has some of the same limitations, though, that Ballo does. Krivic's is actually a pretty good finisher around the hoop. He can't play in any kind of pick and roll defense. Ballo couldn't do that either.
No, but I need him to alter more shots at the hoop. Especially,
yeah, that's fair. That's fair.
I saw someone's criticism over there is, well, one reason they play defense like this, because if they don't, then they're just going to drive to the hoop.
Right.
And if you're going to let teams,
that's where I'm at. Yeah, that's where I'm at.
And put Tobey and Krivic down there, and God, I'm going to say it. Get girthy. And
get girthy. We need girth out there.
Because I think Krivic can be a shot blocker, not an elite, but a good one. But I'll tell you what, I go back to, and people hate this guy, and I have much more appreciation. The thing that Zeus did so well is he took up a lot of space.
He did.
He didn't block shots, but he made it hard to get to the rim, because you either had to go through him, which you weren't doing, or you had to go around him, which takes a while. And that's what I think Awaka is. He's a little more mobile, not quite as tall, but he's just a big human that makes, and you can't just go right to the hoop. So to me, I'd be like, yeah, let's force teams to go to the hoop and see if our 2 big guys can't, alter shots. Then you should be athletic enough to rebound. Instead, they're just letting teams go bombs away. And again, Arizona and Oklahoma shot, if the stats I have on Stat Broadcast are correct, they both shot 41.3%. The difference is Oklahoma was almost 20% better from behind the arc. And that's what the game came down to.
Yeah, I mean, that really is kind of what it comes down to. But also, we got to talk about, again, the offensive rebounding that Arizona continues to give up. These are killer offensive rebounds, and it's always at the worst time, too. If you're going to have multiple big men in there, that can't be the case, which also leads me to my other point. Are we approaching the point where it's are we approaching the point where it's also fair to ask, is Tommy Lloyd not a very good international recruiter? Because all these guys kind of... Krivas, just Krivas, Henry. The other guys never did anything here. Conrad, there hasn't been one real difference maker. Is that fair to say at this point? Is it too early? I mean, where are we at with this?
I think it's tough, right? Because I think just the nature of college basketball in general, it is harder to win that way. You know, Gonzaga, obviously we know why the model is that way, and he spent all those years there, and you see what they've been able to do, but it's hard. I mean, because there's just so much when it comes from a transition perspective, you know, getting accustomed to, obviously the US is one thing, but just the style of play is different. And it's not to say that international recruiting isn't the route to go. I just think you're more better off going after that bigger athletic type guy who molds more into the NBA if you're not able to hit on those kind of guys. And I think the challenge, though, that you're seeing is with somebody like Krivas is I put a lot of that on him when it comes to the offensive rebounding. I just think he's not consistent enough possession after possession where, you know, the ball's right there. All you got to do is step up a little bit and grab it. And it's not like Arizona's getting beat up by opponents that have significantly bigger players or better athletes up front. I just think it's consistency and effort. And if you can figure that part out, I think they'll be fine from a rebounding perspective, but that hasn't been the case so far.
I will say this. Which guy that he's brought in hasn't lived up to the initial billing?
Well,
and here's what I'll say. Krivas was supposed to come in and be – remember, I loved Krivas. Everyone else thought he was the second best out of those two. Adama Ball was a project. Henry was supposed to be a project. Borovichinen was definitely a project.
Yeah.
You know, Balo was a transfer who, again, I think he lived up to what he was. I think you got everything you could out of him. He was a very good player last year. So that's my only thing. I don't know. You lost a few guys before you could find out what they were. The guy who's at St. Mary's or Santa Clara now.
Yeah, Morauskas, who's probably going to be the conference player of the year.
Yeah, and again, Arizona loved him. He wasn't ready then. But everyone else is kind of as advertised, at least initially. Now, Krivas was supposed to be something this year, maybe next year. The rest of the the rest of the guys either haven't been around long enough, or I think maybe more critical is Arizona's traditional recruiting.
I know where you're going with that, and I think it's fair. I think it's a fair question.
Boswell, great as a freshman, fat and lazy as a sophomore. Who's the kid they just parted ways with? Just wasn't good enough. Jabari. Right?
Do you worry? Let me ask you, do you worry? I want to kind of hit on this again. Do you worry? Well, you know what? That's actually called a tease because I've got to get something in here first. I look at this game and I say to myself one thing, Circle K. Circle K. There aren't Circle Ks in the Bahamas. There has not been one person that has sent me a picture of a Circle K. Not one. Guys, do we think that has something to do with it or no?
You know, you need that comfort zone. You need that feel from home.
Right, exactly.
There's something about having a Polar Pop.
Yep, exactly. I think there's something about it. But be like JJ Salinas, the great JJ Salinas, and enjoy your member exclusive beverage deal. Inner Circle members like you can get any size Polar Pop or Froster for just 79 cents. Join Inner Circle for free by downloading the Circle K app today. Terms and conditions apply at participating locations. Visit CircleK.com for details. And PHNX, the Black Friday sale. Check it out. All kinds of good stuff, up to 75% off. Heck, you can buy Ben One White in here for probably 75% off. That's all the kind of good stuff that you've got going on. Check it out. Yes, I mean, Ben White is selling himself for 75% off. 30% off entire store at store, ALLCITY Network. Again, check it out. Be like Kevin L. Thomas and do that. Okay. Here's where, look at that. That's so good. That's so good. What a natural plug. All right. Now, let me ask you, the pause is getting old. I have to pause. Sorry. But no offense. But Now,
Yeah,
let's
that's
look
not
at,
a shtick. That's a technical thing Mike needs
yeah,
here behind
I've
the
got to
scenes.
actually do it. Cosmic Contrarian, Benwin White is a chick magnet. This is very, very true. Very, very true. All right, Scott Parker says, prediction time. How many wins in the Big 12? We're not going to go there yet. We will wait till we have more information. But as far as, like I said, I wanted to get back into the player accountability for a second.
I want to say something about that, though.
Yeah.
Arizona's been in the Big 12 for 6 months now.
Mm-hmm.
Have you ever remembered a team playing in the two major sports non-conference games against their conference brethren? Football did it with Kansas State, and Arizona's doing it tomorrow with West Virginia.
No, I honestly, I can't remember. I can't remember that at all. Arizona's going to play West Virginia. That's going to be, what time is that game? Is it a 1:30 tip?
I don't know.
I think so. I will say this, though.
I may be dual screening it with a certain football team.
Oh, I was going to say with a long-suffering Chiefs fan over here, William Brad Allis.
I will say this, though, Mike Luke. Thanksgiving dinner is calling. I appreciate everybody out there.
TTFN.
Back to
TTFN.
and we'll see you tomorrow.
Yeah, we'll see you tomorrow there, Ben One White. We appreciate Ben One White. Okay. William Brad Allis, though, going into Big 12 play. This is obviously tips tomorrow at 1 p.m. Fun. All right. So tomorrow in the Big 12, it's about to get a lot more interesting, though, obviously, because you look at it, there's a lot of national title contenders in the Big 12. This is not going to be the Pac-12. Honestly,
but they're all flawed.
They're all flawed, but they're
weird.
also...
I watched Kansas, and I'm like, yeah, okay, they're good. They're real good. But watched Baylor the other night. I'm like, they're real good, but everyone's a little broken here and there. And again, it's the early season.
Yeah, but they look a lot better than Arizona.
Oh,
though.
they do. But it's not like you're staring down Auburn, who looks like unbelievable right now. Again, I'm going to list. I didn't mention Houston or Iowa State or that team and that, Cincinnati. There's a lot of good teams. And that's where it's going to be interesting. So even if everyone's a little flawed and Arizona's a lot flawed, yeah, it could be rough. Again, Arizona it's not like they can't right the ship. The question is, will they? And that's the big question, because again, Arizona is talented. Arizona may be able to, as much as we've kind of bashed Tommy Lloyd is a good basketball coach.
He is a good basketball coach.
The question is now he might have to be a great basketball coach, and we don't know that.
Let's see here. Got to give Mike. I will give credit. I give Will that. It just is what it is, though. You know what I will say. I can always tell when somebody's very young when they say this is like the worst season that they can remember for Arizona. I always know that you're like under the age of like 25 at that point, then, because there's been a lot worse than what we've endured right now. Now. Going forward, though, Carter Bryant, I need more Carter Bryant. I've got to play Carter Bryant. He's somebody with potential. He can get better. And I don't understand the Lloyd quote. I still don't get it, where he said, well, we had to bench him because his confidence was down when he messes up.
My guess is, and again, I wasn't studying it. My guess is he just zoned out. There's a difference between, we're going to bench and worried about your confidence. Another, I'm just going to completely zone out. I'm going to completely get down on myself. Because there is someone who just coached a bunch of 13, 14-year-old boys. You have the kids who like strike out. They're down on themselves, but they can't wait to get hit again. And you get the others who then strike out, and then they go out in the field, and then a fly ball goes over their head because they're just mentally out of it. And my guess is maybe Carter Bryant was taking plays off, just not reacting well, as opposed to, he's got to shoot himself out of a slump. He's afraid to shoot. He's afraid. No, there's a difference between, a little gun shy and I'm just so mentally down on myself, I'm messing everything up.
Yeah, and it's Fear. Ben makes a very good point. Maybe that's Ben One White that's already back into the chat. He says Fears would have been the best player on our team. Would be the best player on our team. That's the concerning part. Well, when a 17-year-old would be the best player on your team. Arizona, Arizona hasn't had somebody I don't think since Ben Matherin that you just kind of, and again, it's like 2 years ago, but I get it. That just felt like they kind of controlled the game. When the ball was in their hand, they were going to kind of get what they wanted. It was going to be easy. And that was something that Lute always had. Lute always had somebody that when the ball was in their hand, you felt that they were going to be able to take care of business. I mean, you go back to Khalid, you go back to Damon, you go back to Bibby, you go back to Simon. I mean, you go back to, Gilbert Arenas. I mean, there was always somebody. This feels far more like, oh, well, I hope somebody can do something here, or I hope that can happen. That's I don't know. It's just kind of a little bit of a departure from kind of what I grew up watching.
And that's who Caleb Love should be.
Mm-hmm.
But he isn't right now, and I don't know why. Because he was at stretches last year. He was at times and maybe that's just why he's not in the NBA. He's not consistent enough. I mean, there's other reasons why he's not in the NBA. Let's not pretend he doesn't have some limitations. But he's the guy on this team who's the most built to be that guy. But the problem is with Lute teams. I'll use a great example. There was always someone waiting in the wings too. Arizona has Gilbert Arenas. He graduates early or leaves early. Everyone else leaves with him. Jason Gardner was that guy the next year. I mean, and people are like, well, he went to a Sweet 16 and, an Elite 8 as the guy. He had help. He had great, but Lute not only had one or two, because you mentioned Bibby and Simon were on the same team, and sometimes Dickerson could be that guy, and sometimes he totally couldn't, Utah. But, there was always at least one, and sometimes one in waiting. And does KJ Lewis appear to you to be a star in waiting? No. Right now, Carter Bryant doesn't. Jaden Bradley, again, who's right now Arizona's best player, but he's not that kind of guy. So, yeah, you're right. Arizona doesn't have that guy. And it hasn't since Matherin. Now, Tubelis could be occasionally, but he wasn't in every game I can take over, and sometimes he just disappeared from the spotlight. But that's why they need Caleb Love to be better.
Let's go to the Desert Financial Credit Union by the numbers. Okay, let's look at this. Arizona's #1 credit union. You look at it, and I mean, you're going to win a close game that way. 43-43, 41% to 26%. The big part of the game, though, I'll continue to go back to was when Arizona got that game within one, and then basically gave up 4 wide open threes to Oklahoma. That just can't happen. Maybe 1, maybe 2, not 4. And that to me was kind of the difference in the game there, William.
Yeah, it was that stretch. I mean, obviously they got it down to 3 again. Had a chance to tie with a missed 3-point shot and didn't make it. But yeah, that was a key stretch.
Right. Now let's talk a little bit about Kobe L. Thiel. Kobe L. Thiel, what's interesting? I wanted to bring this up, Brad. Kobe L. Thiel, who I very much like, he's a very good person. Good follow on Twitter. Follow him, by the way. But he has been saying all year that 3-point defense doesn't matter, or he started saying that yesterday. But at the same time, he said you have to have spacers to win. That makes no sense to me. So if 3-point defense doesn't matter, but you have to have spacers to win, I don't know, Kobe, we actually have that. You said 3-point defense doesn't matter. I actually screenshotted it from the chat yesterday. You said exactly that. I do not get that, William Brad Allis. What say you?
I don't know, unless you consider drivers spacers, or unless he didn't say that. I didn't see it. So
he did say it. Kobe, I'll send you the screenshot. But all right, now looking ahead, Arizona's got West Virginia here. That's another game. Arizona right now is at the point where you can lose to almost anybody that's a Power 5 team. They just don't look good. There's not confidence there. They can lose. They could absolutely lose tomorrow. They're 6.5-point favorites, but they could absolutely lose.
Yeah, and it's about as close as it can be to a must-win, I think.
Yeah.
I don't think you can go under. Can they really afford to lose another game before conference play?
Right.
You've already played yourself now out of probably a top 4 seed, unless you just get unbelievably hot. But this team doesn't appear capable of doing that. You're very much trying to avoid the bubble right now.
Right. Now, Joseph says, WV is that's very funny. Has lost their ace point guard. Kurt Carissa, that was very, very funny. We will be we're gonna be back with you now. Real quick, Brad, I wanted to get your take on the Territorial Cup. I have delivered Brent Brennan the Del Taco cheeseburger. I don't know if you saw this or not.
I saw it.
The good luck charm has been instituted. What do you think? If Arizona wins this game, we're on to something at this point, right?
Well, you obviously turned. You're the blame
Kenny
for turning
Dillingham into a greatness.
ASU season around. Yeah.
Yes.
You gave him one in the preseason. So
yeah. If Arizona wins at this point, there's probably something to it. No.
I may have to eat one before my next hockey game.
Oh wow! And then at that point, then you must have yes.
I mean, someday I'll tell you the story about eating spicy red chili burritos 5 games in a row because I was on a win streak and I ordered it by accident. So,
did that come out messy?
I felt like crap during games.
Literally,
this is when we were playing outside at Catalina High School too, and they gave me the wrong burrito, and I didn't have time. I had to eat before my game, and I ate a spicy red chili burrito. And the gurgling going on the whole game, and won 5 in a row, eating that every single game. So yeah,
interesting.
That's how crazy I am. So
you are that man. Okay, now Brad, are you going to have any? Podcasts coming out or anything?
We'll see. I'm just buried at the day job. It's just normally it's a 40-45 hour week gig. It's been 70-80. It feels like I'm in journalism again.
Yeah, right.
Minus I get to write about the playground of the world. I'm actually trying to get some important governmental.
Hey, Brad, Cosmic Contrarian puts it very well. Is it fair to say that you were gassed?
As was everyone else around the crease.
Right. Yeah. All right. On that note, though, Brad, very much appreciate you hopping on, my guy, and thanks for hopping in. Like I said, very Merry Thanksgiving.
I even moved up dinner an hour just to try to accommodate you. Yeah. Actually, it was Andy Bryant. Once you went public with it, and Andy Bryant's like, Brad's in, I'm like, got to speed up dinner now.
Yes, exactly.
There's a turkey sandwich waiting for me and the rest of this Polar Pop.
You enjoy that. You deserve it, Brad Allis.
I do.
All right. On that note, for the great William Brad Allis, I'm merely Mike Luke, the prodigious Kevin L. Thomas behind the scenes. Everybody follow Kobe on Twitter. He's a really good follow on Twitter. Again, he's building up a following. Follow Kobe because, again, then you will have a little bit of light when I smacking him around. All right. On that note, though, for Brad Allis, Kevin L. Thomas, I'm merely Mike Luke. You've been listening to the AZ Wildcats postgame.
We all silly like the mayor.